The stars were quiet tonight. Captain John Miller liked it that way. He stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiant, looking at the vast darkness through the main viewport. Earth was just a blue dot from this far out in the solar system. His ship patrolled the outer edges, where Neptune's orbit marked the unofficial border of humanity's home. 100 years of space travel had taken humans to Mars, Jupiter's moons, and beyond. They had built colonies, mined asteroids, and learned to live among the stars. But in all that time, they had found no other intelligent life. Until today. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual signals," said Lisa Green, her fingers dancing across her console. She pushed a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, brow furrowed in concentration. "It's not one of ours." Miller walked over to her station. "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir. The pattern is unlike anything in our database." Miller felt his heart rate quicken. First contact. It was what they had trained for, but never truly expected. "Can you decode it?" "Trying, sir." Lisa worked quickly, her eyes never leaving her screen. It's a warning, Captain." Before she could explain further, the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the bridge. "Multiple objects entering the solar system," shouted Eric, the sensor operator. "They're moving fast, sir. Faster than anything we have." Miller returned to his chair. "Battle stations, send an emergency transmission to Earth Defense Command. We may have first contact, and it doesn't look friendly." Thousands of miles away, in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Frank Warren received the defiance message. His weathered face showed no emotion as he called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we are no longer alone in the universe," he said to the assembled officers. "And our visitors aren't coming in peace." On the screens around them, satellite images showed strange ships entering the solar system. They had smooth, curved hulls that gleamed like oil in the sunlight. There were dozens of them, then hundreds. "What do we know about them?" asked General Susan Carter. "Almost nothing," Warren replied, "except they're heading straight for Mars Colony." On Mars, Diane Powell was enjoying her morning coffee in the dome that housed the administration offices. Through the transparent ceiling, she could see the pink Martian sky. Mars Colony was home to nearly 10,000 people now, mostly scientists and miners. Her peaceful morning was shattered by alarms. Her assistant burst through the door. "Supervisor Powell, unidentified ships in orbit. They're not responding to hails." Diane rushed to the command center, where screens showed the alien vessels surrounding the planet. Before anyone could react, beams of energy sliced through the Martian atmosphere, striking the colony's outer buildings. "Evacuate to the shelters," Diane ordered, her voice steady despite her fear. "Get everyone underground now." As Martians rushed to safety, Earth received the distress calls. In his office at Earth Defense Command, Admiral Warren watched the destruction with a grim expression. "The Krax Empire has found us," said a voice behind him. Warren turned to see Dr. Alan Cooper, Earth's leading xenobiologist. "You know what these things are?" Warren asked. Cooper nodded. "We intercepted their probe data years ago. They're called the Krax, a militaristic species that conquers weaker civilizations. They've been watching us, and they think we're primitive. Easy targets." Warren stared at the screen showing Mars under attack. "They've made a serious mistake." He pressed a button on his desk. "This is Admiral Warren. Initiate Operation Sleeping Giant. Authorization code Omega-7 Delta." Across the solar system, hidden facilities began to power up. In the asteroid belt, beneath the icy surface of Europa, and in the clouds of Venus, lights flickered on in shipyards that officially didn't exist. The Krax thought they were attacking a vulnerable young species, barely out of its planetary cradle. They had no idea what humanity had been building in secret for the last 50 years. And when they finally saw humanity's real fleet, they would know it was the end. The Krax warships moved through the solar system like sharks in dark water. Their curved hulls gleamed as they approached Mars, Now surrounded by the broken remains of defense satellites, Lieutenant Eric Bailey watched from the cockpit of his small scout ship, hidden in the shadow of Phobos, one of Mars' moons. "Scout 2 to command," he whispered, though there was no need to whisper in space. "I count 73 enemy vessels. They're deploying ground forces to Mars colony." On the red planet below, Diane Powell led a group of frightened colonists through underground tunnels. The sounds of destruction echoed from above as crack soldiers broke through the colony's outer defenses. "Stay together," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "The emergency shelters are designed to withstand bombardment." A young boy looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are they going to kill us all?" Diane knelt down. "No, Earth will send help. We just need to stay safe until then." But she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. The attack had come without warning. How could Earth respond in time? In Earth orbit, the small human defense fleet scrambled to form a blockade. 6 destroyers and the carrier U.S. Valor moved into position, looking tiny against the vastness of space. Admiral Warren watched from command as the first wave of crack ships approached Earth. "All ships, engage at will," he ordered. "Buy us time." The human ships opened fire, their weapons flashing in the darkness. The cracks returned fire, and 2 human destroyers exploded almost immediately. In the engine room of the U.S. Valor, engineer Susan Rodriguez noticed something on her screens during the battle. "Captain, I'm detecting fluctuations in their shield frequencies when they fire their main weapons," she reported. "Can we exploit that?" asked the captain. "Maybe," Susan replied, "but I need more data." The battle continued, with human forces clearly outmatched. 3 more ships were lost, with only the Valor and 1 destroyer remaining. Then the crack ships stopped firing. A message came through on all channels. A creature appeared on screens across the solar system. It had gray-blue skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Humans," it said in perfect English. "I am Commander Vorlak of the Cracks Empire. Your defenses are insignificant. Your colonies are falling. You have 72 hours to surrender your planet and resources. Resistance means extinction." The message ended. At Earth Defense Command, Admiral Warren stood before the World Council, faces of leaders from every nation looking at him with fear. "We've lost Mars. Our orbital fleet is nearly destroyed," he said. "The cracks outnumber us 10 to 1 with superior technology." "Then we have no choice but to surrender," said one council member. Warren shook his head. "No, we have 72 hours, and we have Operation Sleeping Giant." He pressed a button, and a holographic map of the solar system appeared. Dozens of locations lit up across the planets, moons, and asteroid belt. "For 50 years, we've been preparing for this day," Warren said. "After the asteroid crisis of 2078 nearly wiped out humanity, we knew we needed to be ready for any threat, terrestrial or otherwise." The council members stared in disbelief. "Hidden shipyards," Warren continued, "weapons platforms, training facilities, all built in secret to protect against mass panic. The ships you've seen fighting are our public fleet, our decoys." In the darkness beyond Neptune, massive shipyards hidden within dwarf planets powered up. Hundreds of warships, their hulls marked with Earth's flag, began to move. On the Moon, Dr. Alan Cooper activated systems in the underground base known as Alpha. Weapons that had only been theoretical were now being armed. And on the U.S. Reckoning, hidden in Saturn's rings, Chief Engineer Paul Davidson prepared the experimental gravity drives for their first real combat deployment. The cracks believed they were facing a primitive species with limited space capabilities. In 72 hours, they would learn how wrong they were. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was angry. 50 years earlier, a massive asteroid had nearly hit Earth. It missed by only a few thousand miles, close enough to scare everyone. After that day, the nations of Earth came together with a plan. If something from space could almost destroy them by accident, what might do so on purpose? Dr. Alan Cooper stood in Lunar Base Alpha, looking at Earth through a thick window. The blue planet hung in the blackness of space, beautiful and fragile. At 65 years old, he had spent most of his life working on humanity's secret weapons. "Dr. Cooper, the quantum lance is ready for your inspection," said his assistant. Cooper nodded and walked to the testing chamber. Inside was a weapon that could cut through any known material. They had built it after studying a small piece of alien metal found in the Arctic ice decades ago. No one had told the public about that discovery. "Begin the test," Cooper said. The lance fired, slicing through a block of material identical to the cracked ship hulls. Cooper smiled. The weapon worked perfectly. In orbit around Jupiter, Commander Olivia Martinez received her orders. Her job was to gather Earth's scattered fleet units. Her ship, the U.S. Guardian, was just one of 300 hidden vessels. "Set course for the Ganymede base," she told her crew. "We need to move quickly." Meanwhile, on Earth, United Earth President George Simmons met with the Cracks ambassador. The meeting took place in the White House bunker, 200 feet underground. The ambassador, Thraxor, was tall with grayish skin and 4 yellow eyes. "Your species is young," Thraxor said, his voice deep and rumbling. "You have barely left your planet. The Cracks Empire spans 1,000 worlds." "We are peaceful," President Simmons replied. "We wish no conflict." Thraxor made a sound like rocks grinding together. It was a Cracks laugh. "Peace is for the strong to give to the weak as a gift," he said. "You will serve the Empire or be removed. Those are your choices." President Simmons kept his face neutral, showing no fear or anger. "We understand. We will have our answer before your deadline." In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, lights turned on in a massive space inside a hollowed-out rock. Chief Engineer Jane Wilson checked the systems of 50 warships that had never seen battle. "Power at 100%, she reported. "Weapons online. Shields at maximum." Beyond Neptune, in the cold darkness at the edge of the solar system, more ships powered up. Hundreds of them, built in secret over decades, now prepared for war. On the U.S. reckoning, hidden in Saturn's rings, Lieutenant Kate Russell worked with her team. They had discovered something important about the Cracks. "Their communications are complex but not secure," she told Captain Steve Rogers. "Our AI systems can break their codes." "Can we listen to their transmissions?" the captain asked. "Better," Kate said with a smile. "We can talk to their ships. We can make their computers hear whatever we want." In the engine room below, Chief Engineer Paul Davidson activated the experimental gravity drives. These engines could bend space itself, allowing the ship to move in ways the Cracks would not expect. "Gravity manipulation online," he reported. "We can now affect the space around enemy vessels." Across the solar system, humanity's true strength was awakening. Weapons that could pierce Cracks' shields, ships that could move in impossible ways, AI systems that could take over enemy computers. On Mars, the Cracks continued their attack, not knowing they were being watched, not knowing that humans had studied them for years through secret probes sent to Crack space. In Earth Defense Command, Admiral Warren received reports from all hidden bases. Everything was ready. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "Let's show the Cracks who they're really fighting." As the 72-hour deadline approached, humanity prepared to reveal its true face. Not the weak, frightened species the Cracks thought they knew, but a race that had spent half a century preparing for war among the stars. The invaders had no idea what was coming. The final hours of the 72-hour deadline ticked away. On the main Cracks command ship, Commander Vorlak prepared for the final attack on Earth. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the battle plans. "The humans have shown only weak resistance," he told his officers. "Their planet will be ours by the end of their day." The Cracks had no idea they were being watched. Inside their very ship, Captain John Miller and his small team moved silently through the air ducts. They had boarded using stealth pods during a sensor blind spot that Lieutenant Russell's team had created. Almost at the main engine room, Miller whispered to his 5 soldiers. Each wore a special suit that blocked Crack's sensors. Each carried weapons designed to work against Crack's armor. Their mission was simple but dangerous. Plant special devices on the Crack's engines that would allow Earth forces to track their movements and disrupt their power systems. Meanwhile, Dr. Sharon Wells stood in her lab on the moon, watching as robots loaded her new missiles onto launch platforms. These missiles used technology based on the weakness engineer Rodriguez had discovered. They could pass right through Crack's shields by matching the frequency fluctuations that happened when the Cracks fired their weapons. All missiles armed and ready, her assistant reported. Launch on Admiral Warren's command, Dr. Wells replied. She had worked 15 years on these weapons. Now they would see if they worked. On Earth, Admiral Warren sat in the main control room of Earth Defense Command. Screens showed the Cracks fleet in position around Earth. They outnumbered Earth's visible ships 20-1. The Cracks thought victory was certain. Sir, all hidden fleet elements report ready, said his communications officer. Warren nodded and pressed a button on his chair. This is Admiral Warren to all Earth forces. Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. I repeat, Operation Sleeping Giant is now active. Across the solar system, hidden ships began to move. They emerged from asteroid bases, from cloud cover on Venus, from the dark side of moons, and from the rings of Saturn. Hundreds of warships, all built in secret. On the bridge of the Cracks command ship, an officer rushed to Commander Vorlak. Sir, we detect new ships appearing throughout the system. Impossible, Vorlak growled. Our scans showed all their forces. But the screens didn't lie. Human ships were appearing everywhere, surrounding the Cracks fleet. And these weren't the small, weak vessels they had fought before. These were massive warships with weapons unlike anything the Cracks had seen. Captain Andrew Phillips commanded the first attack wave from his ship, the U.S. Orion. All ships target enemy cruisers first. Fire on my mark. Hundreds of human ships fired at once. The new weapons cut through Cracks' shields like they weren't even there. 3 Cracks heavy cruisers exploded instantly. Commander Vorlak couldn't believe what he was seeing. Where did these ships come from? How did they hide from our scans? Inside the Cracks command ship, Captain Miller's team finished planting their devices and began to retreat. Their mission was complete. Now the real battle could begin. Dr. Wells watched from her lab as her missiles struck their targets with perfect accuracy. The shield penetration works, she said with a smile. Throughout the solar system, the hidden human fleet revealed itself. Ships appeared from Jupiter's moons, from deep space stations, and from Earth's oceans. The Cracks found themselves surrounded on all sides. We've been watching you for decades. Admiral Warren's voice came through on all Cracks channels. We've studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. On the Cracks command ship, Vorlak realized the terrible truth. The humans had tricked them. They had shown only a small portion of their true strength, making the Cracks believe victory would be easy. Begin retreat, he ordered, but it was too late. The human ships had already closed off all escape routes. When the Cracks tried to jump to faster than light speed, the devices Miller's team had planted prevented their engines from working properly. The invaders were trapped, and the real battle had only just begun. Admiral Warren stood before the screens in Earth Defense Command, watching as the hidden human fleet engaged the Cracks invaders. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt a deep satisfaction. The plan had worked perfectly. Send the next message to all Cracks ships, he ordered. His words were broadcast across space, reaching every Cracks vessel. For centuries, Earth's military has followed an ancient wisdom: appear weak when you are strong. You thought us primitive. You thought us easy prey. You were wrong. On the Cracks command ship, Vorlak slammed his fist against his chair. His forces were trying to retreat, to regroup, but everywhere they turned, human ships blocked their path. How is this possible? He growled. Their technology should be decades behind ours. An explosion rocked his ship as another missile from Dr. Wells' moon base struck their engines. The lights flickered. Across the solar system, Commander Olivia Martinez led her fleet division in a swift attack on the cracked supply lines. Her ships moved in perfect formation, cutting off any hope of the cracks receiving help or escaping. "Target their fuel carriers," she ordered. "Don't let a single one escape." Her ships fired, and 3 massive cracks fuel carriers exploded in bright flashes of light. Without fuel, the cracks fleet would be stranded. Back on Earth, Gray Howard worked in a small room filled with screens and computers. As a communications specialist, his job was to intercept and decode crack signals. He listened as panic spread through their fleet. "They're calling for help," he told Admiral Warren over the secure line. "They've sent distress signals to their homeworld." Warren nodded. "Good. Let them call. We want their reinforcements to come." In her lab on the space station orbiting Venus, engineer Susan Rodriguez watched as her shield-penetrating technology was deployed to ships across the human fleet. She had discovered the crack's shield weakness during the first skirmish, and now every human weapon could exploit it. "Shield frequency modulators at 100%, her assistant reported. "All fleet vessels now equipped." Susan smiled. "The cracks think their shields are unbreakable. They're about to learn otherwise." Deep in space, beyond the orbit of Pluto, crack sensors detected a new threat. A massive fleet of warships was approaching from the direction of the crack's homeworld. But these weren't crack's reinforcements coming to help. "Crack's home fleet has launched," reported an officer to Admiral Warren. "Estimated arrival time: 6 hours. "Perfect," Warren replied. "Just as we predicted." Lieutenant Eric Bailey led 3 squadrons of fighter craft in a series of precise attacks against the crack's flagships. His pilots were the best Earth had to offer, trained in secret facilities on the dark side of the moon. "Blue team, target their communication arrays," he ordered as his fighter dived toward a crack's destroyer. "Red team, hit their weapon systems. Green team, with me on their engines." 60 human fighters swarmed around the massive crack ship like angry bees, firing with pinpoint accuracy at vital systems. The crack's anti-fighter defenses couldn't track the human ships, which moved too quickly and unpredictably. On Mars, Diane Powell and her colonists emerged from their underground shelters to see crack soldiers retreating in confusion. The invaders were receiving new orders, pulling back as human forces reclaimed the Red Planet. "They're running away," said the young boy who had asked her if they would all die. "Yes," Diane replied with a smile. "They're learning that humans are not as weak as they thought." Throughout the solar system, the tide of battle had completely turned. The cracks, who had arrived as confident invaders, now fought desperately just to survive. And in the darkness beyond Neptune, Captain John Miller's ship rejoined the human fleet after his successful sabotage mission. He watched as the cracks tried to escape the trap that humanity had so carefully set. "The crack's homeworld thinks they're sending reinforcements to help conquer an easy target," he said to his crew. "They have no idea what's waiting for them here." The real test was still to come. But now, the invaders knew fear. 6 hours passed. The battle around Earth continued as the human fleet pressed their advantage. Damaged crack ships drifted in space. Others fought on, not willing to surrender. Suddenly, sensors across the solar system detected new arrivals. A second cracks fleet, even larger than the first, appeared at the edge of the system. At its center was a massive ship 3 times the size of anything seen before. "Cracks reinforcements have arrived," reported the sensor officer at Earth Defense Command. 230 ships. They're led by a dreadnought-class vessel. Admiral Warren nodded calmly. "Identify the leader." A moment later, a new face appeared on the main screen. A cracks with dark gray skin and scars across his face. All 6 of his eyes glowed with anger. "I am Grand Marshal Quetzalcoatl of the Cracks Empire," the alien announced. "Your resistance is impressive but futile. Surrender now or face complete destruction." Warren didn't respond immediately. Instead, he sent a signal to Earth's outer colonies on Titan, Europa. and Ganymede. It was time for the next phase. From the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, a new wave of human ships appeared. These weren't part of Earth's fleet. They belonged to the outer colonists, humans who had lived beyond Mars for generations. "This is Captain Wright of the Titan Defense Force," a new voice said over the communication channels. "Earth, we stand with you." More ships joined from Europa and Ganymede. The outer colonies, often seen as distant and independent from Earth politics, had come to fight. United Earth President George Simmons stood before a camera in his underground bunker. His face was broadcast to every human ship and base in the solar system. "People of Earth and her colonies," he began. "Today we face the greatest threat in human history. The cracks came to our home thinking us weak and divided. They were wrong. Today, all humanity stands together." His words reached every human fighter, giving them strength as they prepared to face the new Cracks fleet. On the U.S. Defiant, Captain John Miller prepared for the most dangerous mission yet. His ship had been equipped with the experimental Nova weapon system, designed by Dr. Cooper's team at Lunar Base Alpha. "All crew to battle stations," Miller ordered. "We have one shot at this." The Nova was a weapon like no other. It could create a miniature star for a fraction of a second, generating enough heat and energy to destroy anything caught in its blast radius. Dr. Alan Cooper watched from his lab as the Defiant moved toward the Cracks reinforcements. The weapon he had spent 20 years designing was about to be used in battle for the first time. "The Nova is charged at 80%, his assistant reported. "Captain Miller is approaching firing range." Cooper nodded. "May it work as designed." What the Cracks didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humans had been studying their technology for decades. Long before official first contact, human probes had secretly observed Cracks worlds and ships. Earth had prepared defenses specifically designed to counter Cracks weapons. Lieutenant Kate Russell led her cyber warfare team from a hidden base inside the asteroid Ceres. Their job was to hack into Cracks targeting systems just as the Nova weapon fired. "Begin the intrusion sequence," she ordered. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, sending complex code into the Cracks fleet's communication network. Grand Marshal Ketzak watched as the human fleet arranged itself in a strange formation. His tactical officers couldn't make sense of their movements. "They appear to be retreating," one officer suggested. Ketzak narrowed his eyes. "No, this is another trick." He was right. The human ships were creating a clear path for the Defiant to approach the Cracks reinforcement fleet. As Ketzak realized what was happening, it was already too late. "Fire the Nova," Captain Miller ordered. A brilliant white light erupted from the Defiant, racing toward the heart of the Cracks fleet. At the same moment, Lieutenant Russell's team disabled the Cracks targeting systems, leaving them blind and unable to respond. The Nova detonated, creating a miniature sun between the Cracks ships. The flash was visible from Earth, a new star briefly appearing in the sky before fading away. When the light cleared, 30 Cracks ships, including 2 heavy cruisers, had been completely vaporized. The others were damaged and drifting. For the first time, Grand Marshal Ketzak felt fear. The Cracks reinforcement fleet reeled from the Nova weapon's devastating impact. Grand Marshal Ketzak barked orders as his ships regrouped, but doubt had crept into his mind. Something was very wrong. This was not the primitive species they had expected to conquer. As the Cracks struggled to recover, a new signal appeared on their sensors. Massive objects were moving out from behind Jupiter, hidden until now by the giant planet's bulk. 7 enormous ships, each 5 times the size of a normal carrier, emerged into view. These were humanity's dreadnoughts, the most powerful warships ever built by human hands. They had been constructed in secret inside Jupiter's moons, concealed from prying eyes for decades. "What are those?" Ketzak demanded, staring at the screen with all 6 eyes wide. His science officer had no answer. The Cracks had no intelligence on these vessels. They were completely unknown. Admiral Warren's voice came through on all channels. "Grand Marshal Ketzak, You see now the full might of humanity's fleet. We kept these ships hidden, waiting for this day. Surrender now, or be destroyed. On board the lead dreadnought, the U.S. Constitution, Captain Andrew Phillips stood on the command deck, looking at the Cracks fleet through the main viewport. His ship was a mountain of metal and technology, armed with weapons that could crack planets. All weapons systems online, reported his weapons officer. Ready to fire on your command. Phillips nodded. Target their dreadnought. Let's show them what we can really do. The Constitution's main cannon charged, drawing power from its fusion reactor core. The energy built up until the front of the ship glowed with blinding light. Then it fired. The beam cut through space, striking the Cracks flagship with unimaginable force. The Cracks shields held for 3 seconds before collapsing. The beam continued through, cutting the massive ship in half. Grand Marshal Kitsack barely escaped in a transport as his mighty vessel broke apart around him. He watched in horror as the human dreadnoughts engaged his fleet. How? He whispered. How could they hide such power? The truth dawned on him with terrible clarity. The Cracks Empire had fallen into a trap. Humans had known about the Cracks for much longer than anyone suspected. They had prepared, built their forces in secret, and waited for the Cracks to make the first move. Captain Phillips led the assault on the remaining Cracks ships, coordinating with the rest of the human fleet. With their main flagship destroyed, the Cracks fought without central command, making them vulnerable. On the engineering deck of the U.S. Reckoning, Chief Engineer Paul Davidson prepared the quantum displacement array for its first combat use. This weapon, developed from theoretical physics, could tear apart matter at the molecular level. QDA at full power, he reported to his captain. Ready to deploy. Activate, came the order. The Reckoning fired the QDA at a cluster of Cracks cruisers. The space around the ships seemed to bend and twist. Then, impossibly, the cruisers began to come apart piece by piece, as if being unraveled by an invisible hand. Across the solar system, humanity's forces pressed their advantage. The Cracks, who had arrived as conquerors, now fought desperately just to survive. In a final, desperate move, Kitsack ordered the remaining Cracks ships to bypass the human fleet and attack Earth directly. If they couldn't win the battle, they would at least destroy humanity's homeworld. All ships, full speed toward the blue planet, he commanded. We will make them pay for this humiliation. A group of 40 Cracks ships broke through the battle lines, racing toward Earth at maximum speed. It was a suicide run, but one that could cause massive damage if successful. Commander Olivia Martinez saw the threat immediately. Her battle group, the U.S. Valiant, and 15 other ships, moved to intercept. We cannot let them reach Earth, she told her crew. Whatever the cost, we stop them here. The Valiant and her escorts placed themselves directly in the path of the Cracks suicide run. What followed was the most intense battle of the entire war. Human and Cracks ships exchanged fire at point-blank range. Ships exploded on both sides. Martinez's own vessel took heavy damage, losing engines and weapon systems. But they held the line. Not a single Cracks ship reached Earth. As the last of the suicide run was destroyed, Grand Marshal Kitsack knew the war was over. His mighty fleet lay in ruins, outmatched by human technology and tactics he couldn't comprehend. The remaining Cracks ships hung motionless in space. Their weapons were silent. Their engines were off. After seeing the full power of humanity's fleet, the fight had left them. One by one, they signaled their surrender. Grand Marshal Kitsack sat alone in his escape pod, watching through the small window as his once mighty armada was reduced to floating wreckage. The humans had won. Not just won. They had dominated in a way the Cracks had never experienced in thousands of years of conquest. A human ship approached his pod. Captain John Miller had been chosen to meet with the defeated Cracks leader and negotiate the terms of surrender. Miller's shuttle docked with the pod. When he entered, Kitsack did not rise. The Cracks leader looked older somehow. The glow in his eyes dimmed. You knew we were coming. Quetzalcoatl said. It wasn't a question. Miller nodded. We detected your probe signals decades ago. We've been preparing ever since. Why not strike first? Why wait for us to attack? That's not our way, Miller replied simply. We hoped for peace. We prepared for war. Across the solar system, news of the victory spread. On Mars, Diane Powell and the colonists cheered as human ships landed to help rebuild what the cracks had destroyed. On Earth, people emerged from shelters to see the flashes of distant explosions fading in the night sky. But the war had been watched by more than just humans and cracks. Hidden observers from a dozen alien civilizations had witnessed humanity's revelation of power. Species that had been planning their own invasions of Earth now quietly shelved those plans. Admiral Warren stood before the Galactic Council, a gathering of representatives from the major spacefaring civilizations. It was humanity's first official introduction to the wider galactic community. For centuries, Earth remained isolated, Warren told them. Not because we couldn't reach the stars, but because we chose to appear primitive and uninteresting. Now that our hand has been forced, we take our place among you. The council members murmured among themselves. Humanity had been dismissed as a young, weak species. Now they had defeated one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. As the diplomatic talks continued, Lieutenant Eric Bailey made a disturbing discovery. While analyzing captured cracks data systems, he found evidence that the cracks had been manipulated into attacking Earth. Admiral, Bailey reported, the cracks received false intelligence about Earth. Someone wanted this war to happen. Warren frowned. Someone wanted to test us. Or weaken both humans and cracks. A new mission was born. Earth needed to discover who had engineered this conflict and why. A week after the battle, Captain Miller stood on the bridge of his ship, the U.S. Defiant. His crew was ready. Their mission, to venture beyond known space and find the mysterious third party who had pushed the cracks to attack Earth. All systems ready, Captain, reported Lisa Green from her communication station. Course is set. Miller looked at the stars on the main screen. Somewhere out there was an enemy perhaps more dangerous than the cracks, one that worked from the shadows. Engage, he ordered. As the Defiant moved away from Earth, a figure watched from a hidden vessel nearby. It was not human or cracks, but something else entirely. Its body was long and spindly, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. The creature activated a communication device. Report to the hierarchy, it said in a clicking language. The humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. They defeated the cracks with ease. Our plan to weaken them has failed. There was a pause as something replied. Yes, the creature continued. They are leaving their system. Searching. They must not find us. The observer's ship slipped away into the darkness between stars. The first battle was over, but a greater war was just beginning. Humanity had revealed itself as a power in the galaxy, and some would see that power as a threat that needed to be eliminated. But humanity had been preparing for war among the stars for 50 years. They would not be caught unprepared again, and any who came looking for a fight would find one.